Hey guys, welcome back to another episode. I am beyond excited to welcome on today's guest, Dr. Cassandra Wilder. She is a doctor of hormones and takes a holistic approach to helping women balance their hormones, balance their periods, all through managing their cycles and stress levels and lifestyle choices, workout choices, different nutrition choices, and everything in between. She's going to bring a wealth of knowledge to us today, and I cannot wait to have her help all of us. So, here we go. All right, you guys. So here is Dr. Cassandra Wilder. I'm so excited to have you here. But I guess the best thing to start out with, I gave them a little bit of an overview of who you were before you got here, but go ahead and give your background, who you are, where you're from, what you're about.
Awesome. I'm excited to be here. I'm Cassandra, and I'm a naturopathic doctor and a hormone expert. And yeah, my passion and purpose really is talking about hormones, thyroid health, the menstrual cycle, and demystifying it. So making it helpful, useful, and empowering to know how to support your own health naturally. But like a lot of people that go into natural medicine, it was from my own experiences that led me here. So I had a lot of my own cycle irregularities. Of course, I was handed birth control. It's like the story as old as time, right? We've all been there. And I continued to feel so dismissed by Western medicine. And then later, when I developed hypothyroidism, again, it was the same thing medication, and that's about all we can offer you. There was no talk of stress, nutrition, how was I sleeping, right? Like none of that was on the table. And it started to brew this frustration in me of like, this is it. This is how we treat women that are dealing with hormone issues. So it wasn't until I went to naturopathic school that I felt like finally people were talking about the real nitty gritty and how to get to the root of it. And even just hearing stories of people actually reversing things like hypothyroidism or healing painful periods, things, that I had never even heard about up until that point, just burned this massive fiery passion in me. And that's what I've been doing now for almost 10 years is helping women get to the root of their symptoms.
That is so amazing. I also took an approach of natural help with my hormones over the last year and a half. And that's what kind of led me to listening to you. And I was like, oh, this woman's gonna be amazing to have on here. Um,
Oh,
so I can't wait to dive in. I know that you said like you decided to dive into, naturopathic and going to school for that based on your background. I did read a little bit on your website, of course, beforehand, some of the things you were struggling with, but, things such as like massive fatigue, hair loss, all of those things. I mean, how long after you started making changes did you start to see the results of those things? I think that's kind of a
mm,
helpful question for people.
yeah. Well, it took me a long time, but I'll tell you why. Because I didn't really have much of an approach initially, right? So I was kind of like throwing stuff at the wall to see what stuck. So I was trying a lot of different diets, a lot of different supplements. So I always joke that I took the really hard way, the
Mhm.
really like long, windy path to get here.
Yeah,
But I think once I finally dialed in on the more foundational things that really mattered, oh my gosh, probably within 3 months, I felt a pretty significant difference. But after a year is when my thyroid results finally came back normal. So,
that's amazing. The
mhm.
fact that you're able to reverse that is like incredible. And I know that when I went to the doctor for my issues, I went just like you, I was way under eating for how much exercise I was doing. So therefore
Mhm.
malnourished, right? I didn't have my period for almost a year. I was losing hair, all the things. And just like you, within about that 3-month period, because I had someone's help to guide me, made a big difference. So I think that's really helpful to know, like, hey, it's going to take a little time, but you get the right person in front of you to help you with the puzzle pieces, you can start to see those results rather quickly. Um, so let's see. I know that we kind of like talked through some of the questions beforehand, but as far as like I think one of the biggest things is nutrition surrounding cycles and hormone fluctuations. Like there's a million different fluctuations that you can see, obviously. But what's like the main cycle fluctuation that you see for somebody or the main cycle struggle and maybe some key takeaways that people can do to help with that?
Mhm. Like specific symptoms.
Yeah, specific symptoms. And then what are some things that people can maybe put into effect if they relate to that symptom to try and see if it helps it?
Yeah. Oh
Perfect.
gosh. Well, there are so many possible options here. I think
Yes.
painful periods is one of the most common ones women struggle with. Um, and what's interesting is usually period pain is related to the hormones prostaglandins, and those cause your uterus to contract. So there are the same hormones that are also needed during labor to help contract your uterus and help the baby come out or help the uterine lining slough off and come out through your cervix. But of course, when we have too many prostaglandins, those contractions or those motions are going to be far more intense. And so when someone has elevated prostaglandins, that's going to likely cause very intense, painful periods, period flu-like symptoms. So loose stools, maybe you feel nauseous, sweaty, yucky when your period comes. And you may also have painful ovulation. Those are all good signs to kind of assess, like, yeah, I probably have high prostaglandins. And then the million-dollar question is, of course, what causes elevated prostaglandins? And that's usually inflammation. So usually I look to what kind of fats and oils are people cooking with. So moving away from polyunsaturated fats like soybean, canola, vegetable oil. I say if you can get a gallon of oil for like under $10, it's garbage. Just throw it
Cut it
away.
out.
Yeah, no. Or if you eat out a lot, of course, unfortunately, pretty much every restaurant uses really cheap oils. So that's a consideration. But usually just starting to clean up the diet a little bit and maybe using some tools like magnesium or turmeric or even ashwagandha, we can decrease the inflammation and thus improve the period health.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, that's such a big one. And like decreasing inflammation using foods, like the oils is a huge one,
Yeah.
packaged and processed foods. Oh my God, so many things. So that's really, really helpful to know. I know that I work with people nutritionally to help, otherwise, but to know that that's going to help a lot with relieving that kind of period pain is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
Um, I think one of the other ones that a lot of people really struggle with is like the inconsistency of periods. Like
Mhm.
mine went away because I was like malnourished, but I have other people that when they have high stress, it seems their period comes more often. Have you ever, like, is there a reasoning or a rhyme or reason? Is it just sort of random?
Yeah, stress does weird things to our bodies. Like you said, it will make some women bleed every 20 days or so, or even some women just have these horrible periods that are weeks long and they're kind of recurring every couple weeks. So they're pretty much always bleeding. Or, like you said, some women will lose their period or they won't get a cycle, every 40 days, 60 days, 70 days, and there's no consistency to it. And a lot of this comes back to ovulation. Because when you ovulate, that will trigger your period to start in about 2 weeks. So, for example, with like the case of long cycles, if someone, say, doesn't get a period every month, it's every 40, 60, 80 days, it's really not an issue with your period, but what's really going on is something's going on with ovulation. So either ovulation is not happening or it's happening really late in your cycle. So it's like your body's struggling to get all the resources together until like day 70. And then finally it's ovulating, and then your period comes 2 weeks later. And that can happen also with very short cycles. If our cycles are really short, which most people would say under 25 days total is what would characterize a short cycle. Usually, again, that's because someone's not ovulating.
Okay. Are there any other signs that people wouldn't be ovulating, or how can we tell?
Yeah, it's a great question. You can have fairly regular periods, surprisingly, and not be ovulating. Now, if you're like, you get your period on day 29 every month, pretty likely you're ovulating. But if they're irregular, Um, or if you notice that the luteal phase, that phase between ovulation and your period is really challenging. So you have a lot of breast tenderness, anxiety, fatigue, sleep changes, insomnia. The luteal phase can be really problematic if we're low in progesterone. And you have to ovulate to make progesterone. So if you don't ovulate, you're missing that foundational hormone, which is supposed to protect you from really unpleasant, kind of stereotypical symptoms that a lot of women feel before their period. So those are probably the biggest signs. But the best way, really the only way to track for sure at home is to track your basal body temperature. So you can track that every day. And when you ovulate, you start making progesterone, like I said, which is a warming hormone, which will stimulate your thyroid. So as you track your temperature, if you ovulate, you'll see your temperatures really significantly increase and stay elevated.
So interesting. I wish I had understood all of this when I was in the process of creating babies. It would have made so much
Same.
more sense.
Literally.
Oh my gosh. No, it's also interesting. And this one's kind of a random one. It just popped into my head because I had somebody ask about it yesterday and it didn't even occur to me to bring it up to you ahead of time. So I apologize for that. But um, as we know, the pill, right? It's not all bad. I don't know. I'd like to hear your opinion on it. But what about for teenagers? I have teenagers that are prescribed the pill, not for, protecting against pregnancy, but because they're trying to fix iron levels or heavy bleeding. What can we give for suggestions for those kids? Because being on birth control for that many years of life, what's that kind of look like? What's your take?
Yeah, it is a hard subject, especially with teenagers. The thing that I'm really passionate about is informed consent. So, meaning for both the parent and especially the young woman that's on it, I think knowing how the pill works, which is by turning off ovulation, it ceases how your brain and ovaries communicate, understanding the risks that do come with it, and understanding that there could be a time and place for it is really key. What bothers me is that so many young women, especially, are put on the pill with this idea that it's fixing everything. It's
Mhm.
fixing your iron levels. It's healing your period pain. It's going to clear up your acne. And that isn't the truth. And these are the same women, that 15 years later, they're working with someone like me because they're like, oh, well, I didn't know that it was doing all this stuff and now I can't get pregnant.
Mhm.
So I think as long as, first and foremost, everyone knows the good side of it and the bad side of it and then chooses to be on it, that's bare minimum. Um, Even with teens, though, we want to look at that root cause to see what's going on. So, like you said, if someone's dealing with low iron or if they have acne, they have painful periods, our body is very, very wise. It doesn't ever give us symptoms for no reason. So, in an ideal world, whether someone's 15 or 35 dealing with symptoms, we'd want to have that more comprehensive approach to address what's really going on.
Okay. Okay. And is that more of a conversation to have with someone like you, or, Western medicine, are they going to have an honest conversation with us about that?
Probably not.
Yeah,
And I'm not here to point fingers at doctors, but
sure.
when they only are given 5 or 7 minutes per patient, I'm sure it's impossible for them to do this even if they wanted to. So yeah, that is where functional medicine is nice. There are functional medical doctors, MDs, but naturopathic doctors, of course, are going to be a little more trained in that root cause approach.
Got it. Okay, awesome. I know that the mom of said teen was looking forward to having me talk to you. So I'm excited to
Mhm.
pass on that information for her because she only wants the best, obviously, for her kiddo. So there's that.
Totally. Yeah.
That's super helpful. I work with a lot of moms that have a lot of teenage daughters, and I think this is going to hit home with them. So thank you for that. Um, okay, so now I do love something that I changed a lot to help with regulating my cycle because I went from like 60 days of pain and terribleness and then finally bleeding to finally being like an every 25 to 27 type person. And one of the biggest things that I changed was how I was working out and when to do different types of workouts. So what's your take on like what types of workouts we should do during the month, why we should change them at different points of the month? What does that look like? What would you suggest for people and like that?
Yeah, great question. Now, part of it depends on how balanced someone feels. So, for example, if I was working with someone that is in a really stressed state, dealing with a lot of symptoms, have thyroid things going on, I would probably encourage them to do more low impact only. So, only strength training, Pilates, yoga, walking. I would be like really strict about that. Now, for the average woman that feels pretty balanced, then we can be a little more flexible. So especially after our period ends and we're in our follicular phase and even into ovulation, we can really utilize the estrogen and the testosterone surges to support us as we have more energy and improved mood, more metabolic flexibility, and naturally lower cortisol levels. So this would be the best time for the high impact kind of stuff. So running, cardio, if you like group fitness classes and jumping
Sure.
up and down and whatever, then great, or maybe a big day hike. These are great things to plug in at that early part of your cycle. In the luteal phase after ovulation, strength training is really ideal. Our blood sugar naturally tends to be more irregular in our luteal phase, and cortisol is naturally higher. And I think a lot of us feel that. Maybe we feel our resiliency is a little lower,
Mhm.
in the days before our period. It's like things
Yes.
can tip us over the edge easier. We probably aren't craving a big run or something like that. Maybe some people do. I don't know, not me. And so strength training, Pilates, yoga are really going to be the go-to. And that could even carry on into your period, or you could just take a few days off.
Yeah, for sure. That was something I used to do. I was like the CrossFit girl, 6 days a week.
Yeah.
Like I didn't care how crappy I felt. I was doing it anyway. Lots
Yeah.
of big changes have happened, but I do appreciate you confirming that because there's just so much confusion around it. And then it's like unheard of for so many people to actually work out to help optimize their hormones and their output that they have available. And it's just amazing the differences you can see.
Yeah.
Um, Let's see. Oh, I did definitely want to touch. You were talking about stress. So this is a loaded question, but the what are the biggest like effects that you see on hormones from high stress lifestyles and can't lower stress down? What are the main things you're going to see?
Oh, goodness.
I know.
That's quite the list. Let's see.
Your top three, maybe.
Yeah. Well, usually the thyroid is going to take a big hit. Stress is going to have a direct impact on your thyroid health. Stress often does turn off ovulation. That's one of the key culprits. So now we're going to see things like infertility, irregular cycles, missing cycles, or amenorrhea. That could be a big thing. Um, I also think it has a huge role in things like anxiety and depression. And that could be for many reasons, but among them, stress negatively impacts our gut health. And our gut health, of course, plays a huge role in our mood. So when I think of like the typical stressed woman, I think of the woman who wakes up to an alarm, jumps out of bed. She has 10 minutes to get out the door. She doesn't eat breakfast. She grabs some Starbucks on the way to work. Work is a mess. She barely has time to breathe, let alone like eat or think about anything. She goes to the gym after work to relieve stress, and she's going to do some, CrossFit, jumping up and down kind of thing because she thinks that's going to relieve the stress of the day. And then she gets home, scrolls on her phone while watching TV, while working on her computer, eats dinner, goes to bed. Like this is
Mhm.
the reality for a lot of women. And then we wonder why thyroid conditions are on the rise, cycle issues are on the rise, infertility is on the rise. It's like we really have to switch something pretty significant because this lifestyle, it's just pushing our bodies to the limit. It's
Mhm.
like a bear is always trying to eat us.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So the biggest thing is that the thyroid and then the gut health really starts to take off and those kinds of things.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know the stress that I was going through with all of it was massive gut health issues. So it's been an interesting road of recovery. Um,
Yeah.
One of the biggest and I think best things that I did, however, definitely need someone like you, which is someone that I used to help with a Dutch test. Is that something that you agree with? You like the Dutch test? If so, why? And I took one. I know that that helped them give me a guiding post of what to do, but it'd be so helpful to have you explain what it is, what it does, and why it's so helpful.
Totally. It's my favorite hormone test, and it stands for Dried Urine Test for Comprehensive Hormones. So it's a urine test that you can do at home. It's really nice because you don't have to go in to get blood drawn. And it doesn't just give you the values of your hormones, it really maps it out so you can see how it's all connected. And I'm sure you saw that. And it feels so much more empowering as a patient, even to look at, because you can see how estrogen can impact testosterone. You can see how cortisol is going to come down the line and impact testosterone. And, it really shows you in a very concise way what's going on and where we need to look at to support things. Um, Again, it's going to be something maybe more only a functional medicine doctor or a naturopathic doctor will know how to read. I've had patients in the past bring, what we talk about together to their normal MD, and they're just straight up told, like, I don't know how to read that.
Mhm.
So don't expect, unfortunately, your average doctor to know even what a Dutch test is, but it's a great tool so that you can target in a little bit more on what's going on and see, on paper, why you're feeling the way you are.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought one of the coolest thing is because I know I have a ton of people that do blood draws because insurance purposes, like, it makes more sense for them. But the problem with blood draws, and I would dare that you would agree, they only take a snapshot in that one time of the day, right?
Yeah.
Whereas the Dutch test is for a full 24-hour period. So, what's the importance of the 24-hour period? I really want that to be hit home, why it's just so helpful to have that 24-hour period of readings.
Well, especially with cortisol, because we
Mhm.
want to see the cortisol pattern. And that's another big benefit of the Dutch test is it's not just testing sex hormones. We're also seeing what's going on with stress hormones. And we're able to see your cortisol pattern. We want to see that it's spiking in the morning, tapering off through the day. And you're not going to get that with your average blood test. And you would not believe how often I see women who go to their doctor and get them to do hormone testing, but the doctor doesn't even correlate the hormone testing with where the woman is at in her cycle. So if you test progesterone on day 7 of your cycle, yeah, there's not going to be anything there because you
Mhm.
only make progesterone when you ovulate. So it's kind of maddening, the disconnect sometimes. But the Dutch test is great, like you said, because we're getting that 24-hour snapshot and it's very, very specific in when in your cycle you take the test so you can get an accurate perspective.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that was like the craziest thing too. The poor girl I was working with, she's like, you literally have no idea where you're at in your cycle because you've missed how many periods, right? So yeah, she just had me take
Mhm.
it. And oh man, it was a crapshoot. So
Oh no.
but hey, that's why we go through things, right? You went through a hard time to
Yeah.
help people. That's what I did too. So we're kind of bringing it
Yes.
all full circle. Um, I think another really helpful thing is, like nutritional choices throughout the month and with our hormones. Are there different types of the month where we should prefer different types of carbs or different types of fats or, um, different types of vegetables to help with different types of things? Is that kind of too an open-ended type of question or?
No, that's a
Okay.
great
Okay.
question. Yeah, we definitely can start to eat more cyclically minded. And, on Instagram, everyone's always talking about biohacking, and it's always like some dude, I call him like gym bros, talking about biohacking. And I'm always like, why does no one talk about as women? Our cycle is our biohack. Because if you understand your cycle, then you understand how to eat differently, exercise differently, live differently in accordance with your own natural rhythm. So just had to say that.
Yes.
Um, but certainly, so in your follicular phase again, after your period, when estrogen is naturally increasing, this is a great time to get in lots of cruciferous vegetables, carrots, things that are going to naturally help your body detox estrogen.
Mhm.
Most women around this time of the month probably don't have a ton of cravings anyway, but they may want something fresh, like a salad or a smoothie, something lighter. Your caloric needs may even be slightly lower, meaning like 1 to 200 calories lower in your follicular phase. Ovulation, it really requires an immense amount of energy, especially for your corpus luteum, or excuse me, for your empty egg follicle that is, released. The egg comes out of the empty follicle for that empty egg sac to transform into the corpus luteum, which is your temporary endocrine gland. That is what's going to make progesterone for the next 2 weeks. That takes a huge amount of energy and nutrients. So I'm a big fan of high nutrient dense foods around ovulation. So think oysters, salmon, um, high quality pastured raised meats. Anything that's going to be really high in minerals is going to be your go-to. And then in the luteal phase, complex carbs are definitely our friend. And I think usually most of us crave things in this phase of our cycle that we naturally need. So yeah, we're going to crave sweet potatoes, more carbs, hearty foods, warming foods, maybe not so much the phase where we want a raw salad or something. We're going to be like steak and potatoes kind
Yes.
of feeling,
Yes.
salty things, chocolate to get us that magnesium through our cycle.
Okay.
So I think as we connect to our own body, we'll find we're naturally craving these things anyways. Um, and yeah, in your luteal phase, they're finding women may need up to 250 additional calories a day.
Okay.
Which I think, again, it's like no wonder we're all craving a cookie
Yeah.
because we just need that little, little more energy.
Yes. And with chocolate, you get the extra magnesium. Works out great.
Exactly. It's fine.
Yes. Okay. And I love talking, like magnesium is almost a buzzword right now. I use the magnesium. I do recommend a magnesium, but I think it's just helpful. Like, how does magnesium go along with the cycle? How does it help with things? I know that I have my definition of it, but I'd love to hear your take on the effects of magnesium through at least the luteal and menstrual phase.
Yeah. Magnesium is, like you said, a total buzzword, but it really is so incredible. There's a
Yeah.
lot of different kinds of magnesium, so it does depend somewhat what someone's goal is. But especially if you struggle with fatigue, sleep troubles, anxiety, depression in that luteal phase into your period, period pain, you're going to want to have some magnesium in your life. I personally really like magnesium glycinate and magnesium malate. I know magnesium can feel confusing because there's a lot of different kinds, and some are $10 and some are $60, and it's kind of overwhelming. But magnesium malate is going to be a good option if you just want to generally get more magnesium in. It really is great for rebuilding and replenishing magnesium stores, and it will not make you sleepy. So you can take it during the day. Magnesium glycinate will make you sleepy, so it's a good one for before bed. If someone has a lot of anxiety, I'd lean more towards magnesium taurate, which is more of a brain health one. Um, Magnesium citrate is the cheapest version you'll usually see, and that's more of a tool for constipation. So if you need help going to the bathroom, it's a good option. If you
Yes.
don't, then maybe not the best magnesium.
Truth. Oh my gosh. Yes, that's absolutely true. Um, and then I know that I have heard before, but I don't know the exact specifics. Does caffeine and magnesium kind of cancel each other out as far as absorption goes, or is that even a thing? I don't know.
Some people are talking about that. I haven't seen the studies to prove that,
Okay,
but I imagine taking them at the same time would be counterintuitive.
sure.
Um, but yeah, I haven't seen the direct research to say if they really cancel each other
Sure.
out.
Yeah, no,
Mhm.
that's totally fair. I just that popped into my mind. And then obviously knowing that your body's naturally more stressed or you're more reactive to stress, especially at the end of your cycle. Like I know that I've been told before, like back off on caffeine overall, but especially
Mhm.
that month, I would assume your take is the same.
Yeah, especially if you really struggle with PMS or
Okay.
PMDD or anxiety, cutting out caffeine that week or so before your period can make a night and day difference.
Absolutely. So helpful. I love that. Um, okay, you've been amazing so far. Thank you. Okay, so another one, and then this is a little bit more specific. I have a number of women who struggle with endometriosis and PCOS. What's your nutritional advice to help them around those conditions?
hmm Okay, well, they have kind of a separate piece for both of them. So let's start with
Okay.
the PCOS, the
Okay.
polycystic ovarian syndrome. To be diagnosed with PCOS, you have to meet the Rotterdam criteria and you have to have two of the following three. At least you're supposed to actually be diagnosed. So irregular cycles, polycystic ovaries, and high androgens or male hormones. The high androgens is usually what gives PCOS the stereotypical symptoms. So, like facial hair, greasy skin, greasy hair, hair falling out from your head, hair is growing on your breasts, acne, kind of all the horrible things. high androgens is also the number one cause of infertility. So definitely something we want to get under control. High androgens are pretty much always caused by stress and blood sugar. So when it comes to nutrition for a woman with PCOS, we really, really dial in on the blood sugar piece. And what I mean by that is changing really how we curate our meals. So let's say someone loves having avocado toast in the morning. That's great. That's a healthy meal. We have our fats, we have our carbs, but we're missing protein.
Mm-hmm.
So really getting these women to start having 20 to 30 grams or more of protein at every meal and a protein-rich snack throughout the day. So we're hitting 80 to 100 grams of protein a day is essential
Mm-hmm.
because protein essentially supports our blood sugar and eliminates a lot of the big spikes and drops that we'll see if we just say eat a piece of toast. Just that is a big thing. But with the blood sugar lens, we don't have to demonize food so much and say, like, you can't eat pasta, you can't eat bread. And instead, we just focus on how do we add protein to this? How do we balance this out? So I find it's actually very freeing compared to a restrictive diet.
Yes.
And then with endometriosis, there are a lot of correlations between endo, estrogen, and the gut. And so when we look at endometriosis, we're certainly trying to address the gut health. And with something like a Dutch test, we can see how a woman is detoxing her estrogen. So we have 3 phases of estrogen detox. We want our body to process that estrogen, take it down the safest route possible, and then poop it out.
Mm-hmm.
But when we have estrogen dominance or when we have endometriosis, we often see in a Dutch test or a GI map stool test that we're not eliminating estrogen very well. So that's where with diet, again, coming back to the cruciferous vegetables, raw carrots are essential for this. I don't know if anyone listening has heard about the raw carrot salads,
Yes.
but if you have endo, I would definitely make that part of your daily routines, taking a raw carrot, not a baby carrot, but a whole carrot, and ribboning it or shredding it or however you want to do it. Add a little salt, oil, and apple cider vinegar, and it's delicious. But
So
that fiber is what you want. So
okay.
no juicing it or anything. You want the fiber. That's really, really essential. And then with your gut health, thinking about your normal kind of go-to gut health nourishing foods, typically meat stock, bone broth are going to be really, really soothing to the gut. Colostrum is really soothing for the gut. And all of these over time can create an improved situation where we can start to address endo.
So good to know. That's so helpful on both of those. I know I coach a number of women with both of those conditions, and I've always been taught, and we can always learn more, right? That especially with PCOS, to have carbs be lower, and I'm a big pusher on protein anyway, because Lord knows everybody's low. Not everybody, but so many. But I think it's just super helpful to know that even if you have PCOS, it doesn't mean that you can't have a piece of toast or you can't have pasta. So we need to accompany it with really quality good fats and fibrous other options and protein. I think that's
Yeah.
just very eye-opening, I think, for a lot of my clients that are going to listen to this. So I really appreciate that
Mhm.
insight. Um, okay, so one of my other people, she really wanted to get your approach on Hashimoto's. I think it'd be helpful maybe to start with what is Hashi, because there's so many different ways to really describe that condition.
Mhm.
And then she would really love to know if there's like a non-pill approach to somehow she could learn to manage it, or if what your take would be on that.
That's an awesome question.
Okay.
And I have a few patients with Hashimoto's right now, so we've been really going down the rabbit hole. So I feel very excited to open
Yay.
this can of worms.
Okay.
Um, so Hashimoto's is essentially when your own immune system is attacking your thyroid gland. So it's an autoimmune condition. And anytime we have autoimmunity, we have to look at the gut. So that is a huge part of this. Hashimoto's is not a thyroid problem. It's your immune system and your gut that are really the problem here. But certainly your thyroid is being affected. A lot of women that have Hashimoto's end up also developing hypothyroidism, and that, of course, is a thyroid issue. The really wild thing to me is that medication does nothing for Hashimoto's. Nothing,
Really?
nothing. It
Ugh.
will help with hypothyroidism.
But it doesn't affect the
So,
root cause of it.
right,
Got
right.
it.
So when a woman has confirmed hypothyroidism and Hashimoto's, I think that is the biggest thing that I want them to know is the medication certainly has a time or place. I'm not anti-medication. It's going to help you probably feel better by addressing the hypothyroidism. But meanwhile, this autoimmune thing is just brewing under the surface. No medication is doing anything to touch that. So that is where lifestyle comes in. And you can be on medication and be supporting your Hashimoto's. So with Hashimoto's, the stress piece is really big. And I know sometimes that's like people's eyes glaze over when you say that because it's like, well, welcome to life. Life is stressful.
Yes.
But that's not the best mentality to have if you have an autoimmune condition, because this is really showing us your body's been pushed to the limit and there's something pretty significant going on. So this is where making some pretty radical changes in your lifestyle may be pertinent, looking at your job and your relationships and seeing what can be changed there. Your health is worth that. And certainly supporting gut health and your immune system. There are some things in studies that are showing promise. So aloe vera juice is showing benefits for Hashimoto's. So I think it's 2 ounces a day is what's tested usually. So I would certainly add that in. I would certainly focus on looking at the diet piece and improving things there, getting in lots of high quality animal-based products to really flood the body with high quality nutrition, supporting the gut health. Um, this is my own personal observation, so take that with, what you want. This is not
Sure.
based on a study, but almost always when I work with a woman with Hashimoto's, they're usually really high achieving women that are really holding themselves to very high standards and can be very, very critical of themselves and can feel like they're never doing enough, or they could be a better mom, they could be a better this, a better that. And isn't that interesting, right? An autoimmune condition is your body attacking itself. And how interesting is it that in the personality realm, they can kind of mirror that. It's like we're always attacking ourselves. So food for thought. I find a lot of benefit with my clients in looking at, the labs and the more like physical stuff. But I also think it's interesting to look at that other layer and to look at how do you treat yourself? Because if
Yeah.
you're picking yourself apart and telling yourself you're fat and telling yourself you're not a good mom and you should be making more money and you should, how do you think that's going to impact your health? So just throwing
Absolutely.
that out there.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes. Thoughts, positive energy, like all of that stuff absolutely affects everything. Sounds, it sounds, cuckoo or crazy or whatever, but it's so true. And it's so
Yeah.
the type A's because the type A's are naturally high stress balls. And it makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
It makes
Mm-hmm.
sense. I'm gonna
Yeah.
bet that you used to be a type A.
Yeah, totally. And I struggle with it still.
Yes.
Um, yeah, it's a journey for all of us. I don't know that any of us ever fully like finally
Let
get there, but
go.
yeah, at least the awareness, right? Like the
Yeah.
awareness where we can catch ourselves mid thought or mid whatever, like I don't have time to rest. I have to do this.
Hmm.
Having that awareness to stop and say, do you though, is
Yes.
really key.
Oh, I love that advice. Thank you for that. I so am the same way. Like constantly my husband's like, chill a little bit,
Yeah.
just sit down.
Yeah.
And it's been very helpful. So thank you for bringing that up. It may not be supported by studies yet, but I
Yeah.
totally agree. Um, Okay, so obviously this has been insanely helpful. How can people get a hold of you? I know that you have multiple different types of programs. You have, is it a period reset, a period reboot? What do you call that program?
Yeah. Period reboot. Yeah. So
Okay,
it's all things menstrual cycle balancing.
I love that. And that's coming out this year
Yeah.
yet?
Yes, we'll probably run it again in a few months. So it's a really fun group program to see how to get to the root of what's going on with your symptoms. And then I have my Restore Your Hormones program, which is a bigger program if you want to have some functional lab testing included. and some direct support from me.
Very awesome. And how can people find that? What's like the best way? I can put your Instagram or website if that's what you prefer into the show notes. Just let us know what you want there.
Yeah. CassandraWilder.com is where you can find it all. And I'm on Instagram at Dr. Cassandra Wilder, and I definitely post a lot. So there's lots of goodies on there.
I love that. Perfect. And before I let you go, because I know you've got your little one to tend back to, I totally get that. Um, what would be your biggest piece of advice for someone that is just in the thick of it right now? It feels extremely
Mm.
lost or doesn't know where to turn or what to do. Best piece of advice.
Mm, great question. Be compassionate. And I know that's hard when you're in the thick of it and you feel like your body's betraying you and things are falling apart. But trying to have compassion for yourself and remembering that your symptoms are just messages. They're not your body trying to hurt you. It's not your body trying to betray you. It is just your body trying to get your attention, just like your car with a check engine light. So trying to see it as, why is this happening versus my body sucks and I'm getting old or I'm 30 or, whatever. Seeing it as your body trying to whisper to you, hey, we really need your attention. Something's not right here. Please take care of us, can really, really change the game. So you're doing a good job. Have compassion and ask those deeper questions. What are you trying to tell me, body?
Yes. Oh, I love that so much. I've never thought of it that way before. Our jerk reaction is why? Why me?
Right.
Instead of, oh, it's a puzzle piece. Put it together.
Mhm.
Oh, I
Right.
love it. Thank you again so much for your time, Dr. Cassandra. I cannot wait to get this posted up for people and have them learn from you. And I'm sure you'll have some people reaching out as well. So,
Mm.
have a wonderful day
Thank
and
you.
thank you again.